This is Chick2Chick Uncut, raw and unfiltered.
Oh, it's that wonderful time of year again. High school seniors are getting ready to graduate. So many of them have already decided they know where they're going. They're off to college. Others are like, they're still trying to decide which college they want to go to. And then there's another group who've decided college is not for them. And Carrie, you're kind of in that situation with your daughter. What's going on with Shay?
Yeah, it's been a topic of conversation, I'd say, since beginning of her junior year, when the guidance counselors and the students are all talking about what they're going to do, where they're going to go, schools they're going to visit. And Shay's coming to us saying, I don't know if that's right for me. Now, she has definitely looked at schools, thought about potential majors. She's not like she's completely against it. But what she's saying to me is, I don't think this is a good fit for me. I want to learn some things, but I don't know that I want to go away to college. So yeah, that's where we are.
You know what? And I think that is very mature, very insightful of her, because so many kids think they have to go to college because society tells them they have to go to college, and the parents saying, you're going to college, and she's coming to you with an open mind, open heart, saying, hey, Mom, I don't think this is a good fit. So I have a lot of respect for her for doing that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I do too. And I think that the fact that she's comfortable saying this isn't going to work for me right now, and that we're saying that's okay. Here's the thing. You could go to school in 2 years from now. You could take a couple classes at the community college and then really figure out what you want to do. Maybe it will be something you want to do. But if you're not ready to make that investment, don't do it.
And that is such an important word you just brought up, investment, because what Shay is going through, there's a much bigger issue going on here, which really is the basis of this podcast. College enrollment is down across the country. And that's going on for a couple of reasons. It actually started with COVID. And in 2025, this year, they're saying it's going to get even worse. And they actually have a term for it. They're calling it the enrollment cliff, that enrollment is going to drop off even more. And I just want to go through this quick list of why they're saying college enrollment is down. They're saying that birth rates are down. The cost of higher education is way up. A lot of kids and families are questioning, is it worth it? What's the ROI? What's the rate of return on our investment, which is what you brought up? Something else that's going on, and I think this is important, and it should be going on, there is a push at the high school level for kids to learn a skill and to learn a trade, because we don't have a big workforce of skilled laborers. And so that's a good thing. And the other thing that's going on is high school graduation rates are down. Not as many kids are graduating from high school, which I think it's very interesting. So let's go back to that whole thing, Carrie, that you brought up, investment. Is it worth it? What's the rate of return on my investment? What conversations are going on in your house about that?
So, my husband is in finances. He's a financial advisor. And it's interesting because Shay has a lot of conversations with him about stocks, about why you put your money in certain places. And so that made her think, well, if I'm putting my money in certain places, like stocks, things like that, well, isn't it the same as putting the money into going to school? Because you and I had a podcast several years ago on skin in the game.
Yep.
I believe in skin in the game. So my kids have always known, you have to put something into this. This isn't just like free ride, okay? So for her, she's thinking, okay, well, how much debt do I want to come out with? What am I going to learn? Where am I going to go professionally from there? The return on investment is not so much she's thinking she can't get it because she's not going to learn a lot. It's what's the workforce going to be look like then? Am I going to pay off that debt in a timely fashion? Or could I just do something and learn something and not have to worry about a big debt? So that's the conversation I think is so key for kids to have. This is an investment. Most kids are putting money into it. You and I've talked about the fact that they come out, that's the average, $45,000 in debt. So we need to be honest with our kids. Where do you want to be in so many years from now? And how much money are you going to have to start putting towards a college education? And will it serve you? We absolutely have to talk to our kids about this.
Well, and this is one conversation you're talking about with Shay, that one night that we were sitting with your other daughter, Sam, and we were talking about it. And she said, I have all this college debt now. I don't know how I'm going to pay this off. I don't know how this is going to work out. I think that kids need to be aware that they're not giving you money as a gift. You have to pay that back. You're not going to walk away. And, we've heard all this conversation about college debt. They're going to erase it. They're going to forgive it. It's not happening, kids. It's not happening. And do you want to walk out of school? The other thing that drives me crazy is, well, I want to go to Notre Dame, or, I want to go to Fordham, or I want to go to Yale, and, it's $90,000 a year because I want that college experience. Really? Really? Is that, are you going for an experience, or are you going to get an education? And, by the way, you've got to pay for that experience.
Your experiences. So here's a case in point. One of my dear friends, her daughter went to a school down south, won't name it. They have a massive rush. So just that alone, anybody listening might know what school I'm talking about. So my girlfriend says to her daughter, okay, that's great. You got in and that's where you want to go. Here's the thing. There's only so many times you're going to be able to come home because it's a flight. You want to join a sorority. Did you see how much those dues are? You want to be able to do all the things socially. How much money are you going to make over the summer to be able to do that? We're not footing the bill for that. We're footing the bill for you to crack the books. So I don't know how many parents have in-depth conversations like that. And certainly not all kids are going to go to a school that has a robust sorority fraternity life that they want to join. But you're moving away from home. You do have to have the money to exist and live and do all the things on top of your books and anything else that goes along with it. It's not just I'm going to roll up at school and get an education. It's expensive. There are expenses involved.
Yeah, and you have to take the time to have that conversation. I think so many parents are like, well, I want my child to have that. If they want that, they should be able to have. No, we don't get everything we want in life. And you have to sit there and boil it down and break it down. This costs this much, that costs that much. It's not being, you're not like killing the party or being the killjoy in this situation. I don't call it or think of it as being a pessimistic. I think you're being realist by showing your child the reality of that conversation, and we talk about the investment. Is it worth it? What's the ROI on this? Why are you forcing your child to do something that they might not be 100% invested in themselves? Because the reality is only 60% of kids who enter college graduate from college. Only 60%. That means 40% went to school, and whether they incurred all of these student loans, tens of thousands of dollars worth of student loans, or their parents paid for it, what's their ROI on that?
I mean,
a big fat zero, right? A big fat zero. And we both know people who are in that situation, that their kids went and then they dropped out and they have nothing to show for it.
No, they really don't. And I will say there's something to be said for you're 18. Two of my kids actually 3 of them were 17 when they went off to college. They turned 18 in their freshman year. And there's something to be said for learning how to be away from your parents and to conduct yourself as a young adult and learn things as a young adult that you've taken from home, right? Your parents kind of go, okay, I gave you all of the tools. Now go show yourself in society. So I think it is important to do that. And that's one thing Shay talks about. She's like, but I want to get out of the house. Like, I want to go and live somewhere and kind of have some independence. And I said, I understand that. Yeah. And I'll give you much more independence after you graduate from high school. But that's a small portion of what you're going to need and learn as a grown-up. That's one small portion. But I think these kids that, are the 40% who go on are still looking for jobs. I've got one of them. I've got one who she took 2 years and she said, my brain is too full. I need to just go dump it and do something simple, right? That's my Peyton. So now that she's re-engaging and looking for jobs, it's not easy. She's thinking, do I go back to school? Do I now reinvest a little bit more? That's that thought, And then the other kids who are the percentage that didn't make it out, they still have the debt. And what's the workforce look like for them if they didn't even complete the 4-year program? I mean, again, I go back to this. The conversations need to be more than sit down with your guidance counselor and they go, so what schools are you looking at? Have you gone on to Naviance and be able to pull up all the things you need to pull up to provide to the school? Like, let's have some practical conversations.
I mean, can you just imagine paying off a student debt after you dropped out of college? You're paying for something that you didn't even finish. I just can't imagine that. And you brought up Peyton, and this is another conversation too. COVID really, really changed everything because there was that whole shift to doing things online. And I think a lot of kids are now starting to question, and parents are starting to question, if they can get their education online, why am I paying that huge expense for room and board, which in some cases, the price of room and board costs more than tuition.
Yeah.
And they're starting to question that, and they're looking at this going, why am I paying all this money when I can just get online and get my education?
Well,
can you share what happened with Peyton?
Well, yeah. So, and I was just going to say that I don't understand now in this day and age why we are not in the classroom, why we are not face-to-face, why we are not teaching in person. So Peyton had decided, I'm going to go back and get my master's. And the school that she went to for this and got into, very reputable university. And initially they said, oh, it's going to be fine. You're going to have a little bit of a hybrid. You're going to have, a few classes that are going to be online and the other ones are going to be in person. And Peyton thought, that's great. That's a really good mix. Then she comes to find out that they are all going to be online. She's like, what am I paying for this? Why would I do that? And actually, she made a decision to just stop the process, wait till she gets a job in in criminal justice where she's looking, and then have an employer help pay for that to go on to do her master's. And I thought, I just don't understand. Again, if you go to a school and you want to be a person who's studying online, that's entirely different. But if you're going to a school, and this is a school that's well known for being physically in class, there is so much you need to get out of being physically in class. And your payment of everything should reflect that. So if you're not going to be in class, why the heck are you paying for that?
I don't get it. I don't get it. And I agree with you. There is value. There's so much value about physically being in the classroom. And there's value of physically being in an office and working with other people. You're learning communication skills. You're learning to get along. There's so many things. But when a college says, oh, yeah, this is only being offered online, like, exactly, like, what am I paying for here? What is going on?
Yeah. And I think, too, I think there needs to be a conversation about a person who wants to, just learn something. Like, here's an example. Shay has ideas of entrepreneurship. She's thinking about someday being a business owner in something she's really excited about. And so instead of going, oh, I'm going to have to go even for full 2 years for an associate's to go learn this, what are the main things you need to learn? Well, you really need to learn accounting because you need to learn how to keep your books, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a couple other things. So why not just learn that for the value of taking that information and putting it into what you want to do instead of saying, I have to have a degree, especially if you're going to be entrepreneurial. You can just go learn what you need to learn, whether it's taking a class at a local college, taking a class that is virtual, or going into a trade program, something you and I have talked about quite a bit that I think has so much merit.
Yeah, I do think there is so much merit to that. You know, we talked about there is a big push at the high school level to push kids into vo-tech. We don't have skilled laborers anymore. We don't have people who can, you know, do roofs and build this and do that. And there's a big push too on the statewide level. The state is pumping a lot of money into apprenticeships. And that's a good thing too, because not every kid is cut out to go to college. They don't do well with books. They're better with their hands, and the state is recognizing the value of that and putting money into apprenticeships where kids can go in, learn a skill. They can actually earn college degrees, or I should say college credits, and earn a degree, and then they're guaranteed a job when they come out of that. And so that isn't something that we should discount. And it's okay. Again, parents, if your child comes to you and says they want to do that, let them do it.
Yeah, I guess this is kid number 5. And maybe I'm softer. Maybe I have seen the world enough to know, not everybody's going to have the same path. But what I can't quite understand is in schools, there's still this, I don't know, it feels like a hierarchy of the ones that are going to go to college are somehow better.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that do vo-tech or a certain way. And I think it's laughable. I think it's very laughable because a lot of those kids coming out of vo-tech are making good money. And they're making more money than the kids who are going off to school, somewhere else. And they're still scrambling to figure out how to get their job and paying back a ton of debt. I think the joke is on them sometimes. And I wish there would be a broader conversation. And maybe some of these schools need to have alumni come back in these spaces and say, I got to tell you what I did. Now, I think they need to have grit, and I think you need to have, a lot of determination and all of those things in the beginning to really prove yourself in those spaces. But I think that if we had more people coming back into schools representing that workspace and saying, hey, this is important. You can have your own business as an electrician, as a plumber, as a welder. All these things are needed. Don't scoff at it.
Well, we call this podcast is college being canceled, tongue in cheek. Yeah. But colleges are struggling. And again, statistically, enrollment is down across the board. Parents, you need to know that a lot of schools, a lot of colleges are now offering discounts, and they're offering different things as an incentive to get your child to go there. You can actually negotiate with colleges to try to bring down the cost of tuition and to maybe get a scholarship for your child. So parents also need to be their child's advocate, that if they decide, this is what my son wants to do, this is what my daughter wants to do, get involved, advocate for them, because colleges realize they're in a pinch and they have to do something now to get those numbers back up.
And I think that parents should do that. I think the only way we're going to change the way this is operating, college is absolutely ridiculously expensive. And the only way it's going to change is if parents and young adults stand up and say, this is ridiculous. Why would you ever want to send us out into the world in such a deficit? I mean, that's irresponsible, and it's not very realistic. So, yeah, I think there should be a big push with that. You know what else I also think about with the college being canceled? I think there's a lot of people concerned about being safe on campus. I think they're safe in feeling not safe in conversation, feeling not safe in, what they can actually do and say around with a professor, no matter which side of the conversation, we'll call it, you are. I don't think people feel comfortable. I certainly know that if Shay, and when she's been looking at schools, when she thought that's what she might want to do, I had different parameters. I really did. I sat down and I was like, I'm not putting half of my money into this, and this. And so it changed the scope of the conversation that way as well. And so I have to wonder if that is part of the conversation. Young people not feeling good about going to some schools.
Now, and that's a valid point. And now I think I might hit a nerve with you on this one.
Uh-oh.
Let's talk about Penn State, shall we?
Ah.
I know. And you know what? It's not fair to single out Penn State, but I'm just going to use them as an example because this is another problem. I just don't think that a lot of schools, a lot of universities have their priorities straight. That's just the way I feel about it. It's this whole sports thing. We put so much emphasis on sports and football and this and that and pumping money into these programs. And I'm like, are we sending our kids to school to get an education? Or are we sending them there to play football? And using Penn State as an example, they're having some money issues and they're talking about, cutting programs, and they're having discussions about closing branch campuses. Oh, yeah, but we're going to pump $700 million to make improvements and to upgrade Beaver Stadium. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. Okay.
Wait,
I
what?
straddle a fence with this.
What are we doing here?
I know. Look, I straddle a fence with this one. Okay. I'll start with saying, I grew up going to Penn State. So whether you're someone who went to Penn State or just you were involved from a young age in a large university, you get the hype. It just becomes part of you. You get excited about it. And never once did I think about Penn State as going for an education. I never did. I mean, it just didn't occur to me. I was like, Penn State football is amazing. I love it. And so I went to a smaller school because I didn't want the distraction.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to go to a big university. I understand that there's a big pool. There are a lot of kids who are like, I want to go there. I want to go where that action is. I love this. I think that it's like a double-edged sword because there will be the administration who's going to argue if we have a large volume of D1 amazing athletics, then it's going to bring more people here. And then the other side would be like, but are we an athletic school? Are we a academic school? I think in the case of Penn State, their fans, which a majority of them didn't go to Penn State, they want a winning team. They're all about the Natty, the national championship. They're all about what are we going to do to compete?
Who cares?
I get it.
Who cares?
I straddle the fence because I hear it and I get it. And there's a time or two I'm sitting on the sofa doing the same thing. What the heck? Why can't we win? Why can't we blah, blah, blah? But because I had kids that go to school there, for me, like you said, I'm like, I feel bad for the kids whose backyard, satellite campus just rolled up, but yet that stadium is getting an entire facelift. Like, make that make sense. So to your point, I think a lot of these universities think that the way they're going to get more money is if their athletic program is much more stellar. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I just think that that's what they're seeing. That's what they're looking at.
Well, look, I have nothing against Penn State. I love going to games with you, and I love tailgating, and I love being in the stadium, and that feeling in this, it's just electric. Yep. I love it. It's a lot of fun, but I just can't make sense of, you're going to tell me you're going to cut programs. You're telling me you're going to close branch campuses. And a lot of these kids go to the branch campuses because they're commuters.
Yeah.
And they can't afford the room and board. And so, of course, they live at home and then they're going and taking classes at branch campuses. This is just not connecting in my brain that you're going to close this, you're going to cut that program, but you're going to pump money into football.
And we know they're never going to, likelihood of them reopening those campuses.
Once something's closed, it's done. Yeah. It's done.
Yeah. I don't know. It's disappointing. Did they open too many and then they realized it was not cost effective? Or did they see that their enrollment was down in all those places? But I think the bottom line is there has been a culture shift in college, the thought around college. And that's very reflective now of what you said before, the low enrollment and kids even maybe completely dismissing going to college, or at least thinking about it and saying, is this what I really want to do? Do I want to work for first? Do I want to do a trade school first? I think there's just a lot more thought. And going back to even talking about COVID, I think COVID really highlighted whether or not you really want to be at college or not.
Yeah. Well, my son went right to college and he had a great experience and he's done and he's working. He's already out in the workforce, which is just crazy how time flies. But I don't think there's anything wrong with a kid coming out of high school and hitting the pause button. Mm-hmm. Because at the age of 17 or the age of 18, whenever they're graduating, they're still young. and you're asking them to make this monumental life decision. And if they're on the fence about it, or they're not certain this is right for them, and they want to take a year to think about it, give them that year. Let it go. Give them that time to contemplate and figure out what's the best fit for them. Because to your point, they can go back to college in a year or 2 years. They can take a job and say, yeah, you know what? I really do want a college education. I'm of the thought process, let a child do something because maybe they figure out then that's something that they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So if a child comes out and they're like, I don't want to go to college, but, I'm going to go work on the railroad, and they do it for 2 years and they go, you know what? I don't want to do this. I do want a college education. That is a life experience. That is something that they can process. And that's something that can save them a whole lot of money by going to college first when their heart wasn't in it. And now they've incurred tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt and have nothing to show for it.
Well, I think they'll probably be a better academic whenever they wait a minute, because if they have to go right out, they're coming from, oh my gosh, I just finished my senior year. At Penn State, you can do the early enrollment program. So if you don't get in to go in main campus in the fall, they ask you to come for the summer program, which is actually a really good idea. It gets them oriented better in that big, gigantic campus. But my point is, the kids get like 6 weeks off, if that, maybe a month off, and they're right back in to school again. And I think it serves a young person to take a minute and do something else, exercise your brain in a different way to know how to be a good student and to actually be there to learn. You can have fun, but that your job is to be there to learn. I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know why we have to push people out immediately. I don't know why you can't be 20 years old and sending in, your college application, just saying, hey, I needed 2 years to just figure out who I wanted to be and what I want to do. I think that would be so much more responsible.
Agreed. You brought up earlier, you have to have skin in the game. I also think you have to have your head in the game. 100%. So you can play the game well and get the best return on your investment of that college education. Mm-hmm. All right, so as we wrap things up here, I applaud Shay. Mm-hmm. Way to go, girl. You do right. You. You have any final thoughts?
No, I just think as parents and grandparents, stop asking your kid in their senior year, hey, where are you going to school? Do not make that the question that you ask a young person. Hey, what are you looking forward to when you graduate? What are you up to? What are you going to do? I think we need to just flip the switch a little bit and give these kids a chance to think about it instead of pushing them into things.
Yeah, change the conversation a little bit. Well, best of luck to Shay. I know she's going to kill it, whatever she decides to do. And again, kudos to her for being mature and recognizing that she didn't want to do that. And that's okay.
Yeah, I think this is a really good podcast. I'm glad that we had this conversation. I really hope that those who are listening and watching enjoyed our armchair therapy too. And do us a favor, head over to Chick2Chick YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. That way, when we have something new to chirp about it, you are going to know about it. So we're back to chirp about another topic.